So the last time we hung out, that was Nebraska, right?
Yes. When we played the
Yes, where
games, board
you
games.
you kicked ass in Obscurio as the clue giver, which that was a lot of fun. I've gotten to know you primarily through like our mutual interest in board games.
It's a pretty good way to get
which
to know me, I would say.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's been great. And so, so I guess just to start things off, I'm always curious, like, what are your biggest hobbies or interests that like you're most into?
The things that I sort of love, I do love games. That is something
Mm.
that I have always done, board games. I think it's also partially because I grew up in a house where I had to hunt down people to play with.
Yeah.
So now, once I'm able to do that, I love doing that. And thank you for the recommendations this weekend. We played a lot of those games on Thanksgiving.
How do they go?
They actually went really well. The train game that I got a train game, and that was for my nephew because he's autistic. He did that, but he loved the games. We played the what is the spy game that was back and forth, the word association.
Code names?
Yeah, my niece loved that, and actually Azul was a big winner.
That's great.
It took a little while. It took her a minute to understand that you have to read the instructions first. But once I got through everything, so she had a
Sure.
little ADD. She's like, what about, I don't know how to play this game. I'm like, give it 2 minutes. And then we sat down and played for
Mm.
hours. So it was really good for her. You know, the game was fun, but it was also good for her to, to sit down and learn something new, which I always think is exciting.
Sure. How old are your niece and nephew?
My niece is 12 and my nephew is 10. So,
Gotcha. And what was the train game?
the train game, I'm trying to think of
Ticket to Ride?
Yes, exactly. Ticket to Ride.
Which map?
We I was supposed to get the New York map since I'm from New York, but they wound up giving me I wound up after I left the store I realized I'd accidentally grabbed Amsterdam. So we got a different kind of lesson.
Interesting. Okay.
Which was funny. That one was interesting because like I mentioned, my nephew he's functioning autistic at this moment, but he was able to play all he actually won the game in the term of trains and putting things on the board. But
Nice.
the level of the cards, I sort of played that with my niece, so we wound up it wound up being a good game. He loves trains. It was good. He built the longest railroad between all of us, so he did
Nice.
okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at the map. It's one of the smaller ones, like
Yeah.
New York.
I wasn't sure how much concentration they would have on this to start off, so I was like, let me try this. I'll slowly indoctrinate them into the games.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's a great choice for because New York is also very small. I've played that one, and that's a very small map. And this looks like that sort of that vein of like, hey, kind of like get kids and adults can play. And then if they get into it, then you can pull out like classic Ticket to Ride, which is like the whole United States.
Yeah,
for,
that was. I saw that, and that was recommended when I went in, and I thought this is good, but it probably will not fit in my suitcase. So that was the reason why I stayed away from that one.
Right. I'm glad Azul was a hit because, I introduced that to my parents who are super like, they never played any board games really.
Mhm.
And then as I'm getting really into it, I've been like, okay, I want to try to introduce stuff to them that they'll like. And Azul was a lot of fun for them. Great tactile feel though too with the tiles. They feel so nice to like, they look nice. It's a very pretty game.
That was one of the things that I loved. I had to I had to figure out how to explain the different portions of it, but once they had it, they really loved it.
Nice. Yeah, and Codenames is just a classic. And what I love about that one is that's like pretty much any number of people can play it because you can do like one-on-one. There's even a Codenames duet, which is like a one-on-one version. But you can do like, teams of 2, teams of 5, it's just like fully I've played it with like 12 people like online. It's just there's actually a great free version of it official that's all online, which is fantastic and has been fun for like charity streams and stuff like that.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, that's like I could see that being a fun game even with larger groups. That was my niece. That was my favorite one from my niece. She was
nice.
I left them there with them. She was like, "Can I have this?" I was like, "Yes, of course you can." I was like,
"You see, I love that too." Yeah,
exactly. I was like, "Play the game."
I was with my parents came to visit, and a bunch of my aunts and uncles. They're all like, 60s, 70s Korean people, like Korean aunties and uncles who like don't play board games. And are you familiar with Six Nimmt? Do you know that game?
No, it was on the list that you told me, but I don't know what it is. Yeah.
It's a great game where basically it's kind of hard to explain without the visuals, but there are 4 rows and you're playing numbered cards and they slide into the rows in order. But if you ever play the 6th card in a row accidentally, you have to eat the 5 cards in front of it and they have points on them and points are bad. So it's like everyone's playing cards at the same time and then you're sliding them into the rows like where they go. And people are like, oh no, if they get like the 6th card in a row. It's extremely simple, but so much fun. Like, I think the English version is called Take 5, if you ever do pick it up for like your family or something. And also I have it, so whenever the next time you come over, we can always play it.
I would be down for that. That's fun. And yeah, I do try that. That is like stuff like that where you can get everybody and all the generations involved makes me happy. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's been nice seeing like how sort of mainstream it's become, the hobby, with there are games that all ages can enjoy, and once they like I have my cousin's son, what is that, second cousin? I don't know, cousin nephew.
Son, yes,
I don't know.
Yeah,
sure.
Cousin removed or something.
Something like that. Yeah, he is like, the last time I played with him, he could handle like pretty complex, like for his age. I was like, wow, it's cool to see that stuff that I thought might be inaccessible is like, oh no, like if you have the hunger for it, you can get into it, which has been nice, and it's been my goal to indoctrinate as many people as I can into the hobby. I've had people be like, I don't know, board games seem complicated. I'm like, try this one. And they're like, oh, that was fun. I was like, good. Excellent.
Exactly. That was the thing with my niece. Like when she was very much like, it's so complicated. This game is too hard. We're not going to be able to play it. And then the next day she was like, can we play that game again? I was like,
Nice.
Sure. I was like, yes, we can.
That's great. What is your favorite board game?
Oy vey. Okay, well, that's a good question. A lot of the stuff that I played were sort of simpler ones. I used to play a lot with my niece and nephew or kids, so we would play.
Sure.
I loved the game. The game that we played was so much fun. I really liked that a lot. I used to play sort of image games like Dixit and things like that with the kids.
The Dixit's great. Yeah.
And I also like, there is, why is it going out of my head? The spy one. It's not, because I would also play One Night Werewolf. That was a thing that I would always pull out in families when they were kids.
Spyfall?
No, not Spyfall. The, one of you is the spy. One of you is the spy and you have to figure it out. Clearly, I'm better at playing the game than I am remembering the title.
No, that's okay. Well, do you remember any other details about it? Like someone's a spy.
It's the card games you put down and you're trying to figure out who's the double agent. And
Resistance.
Yes, it was Resistance. Resistance.
Yeah. So, we played Avalon at Nebraska, right? And
Avalon had a lot of the fun. I really, really liked the Battlestar game that we played. Like that was kind of fun.
That was great.
Yeah, that was really I like when there's a lot of stuff going on, but then you kind of it's as long as there's someone like that distills it down. Sure. I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah, I take pride, and I think I'm pretty good at taking a game that's maybe it's more complex than people like think, but then trying to break it down and but really all you're really doing, and I think a lot of games are like this, is there's like 3 things you can do, right? Just focus on those 3 things. Different stuff can happen as a result of them, but as long as you're aware, like on your turn, do 2 actions, here are the actions, and as you understand what those actions do, and then it's not so bad. But I will say, like when because you and Bill came, who has been on the podcast before, when we played like a 6-hour game or something. It was a long game, but you guys were like engaged throughout, and I was like, they passed the test.
Yeah, it was totally fun.
Clearly, they can handle anything. Yeah. Like if they're because some people, they're gonna be like, why did I come? Why did I? Yeah, this is torture. But I was glad that was a good group. I really enjoyed
I had a lot of fun with that too. Yeah, it's some long form games I do love as well. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Now, besides board games, any other interests you have that are like maybe ones that maybe people might not know about you
I think a
right
lot.
away?
I think I usually put up a lot of pictures of them. I mean, like I do have there's writing. I love poetry and there's
Mm,
I'm a big sci-fi film person, but I love vampire things. I don't talk about that a lot, but it's very
nice.
good.
Okay.
But and I'm a big street art person. I love when I
Mm,
go to new places. I try to visit the street art that they have, or like I think it's coming from New York, and I'm actually going to the Banksy show tonight. But
oh, nice.
yeah, so I love going. There's something about like people putting stuff out in the street and art that winds up being accessible for everybody that I really love. And
Mm,
so my father was an artist. He painted and did a whole bunch of things, but there's something about street art that I really, really, really enjoy. So
oh, that's
that's
great. Is there a because I'm not super familiar with street art. Like, is there like a really like significant piece that you're like, oh, this is like close to my heart, or I really like this artist, or anything like that?
it changes. It changes in the city. What I like sometimes are a lot of mixed medium stuff. Like there's sometimes you'll go
Mm.
places where they'll have. There was one huge wall that I saw that was amazing. That had the whole top was like a treetop bush on top, and they had painted a
Ooh,
mural and they had incorporated someone's face, and that wound up being like the hair on their head. I like when they sort of take
wow.
objects that are there and then incorporate them so that you have like that 3D aspect of it, and then you're going, you're doing that. But there's I think it's called Wyndham Walls that's down in Miami. I think I went down there and I
Okay,
saw those. And there used to be I'm still looking around for places here because of the pandemic. I didn't go out as much as I wanted to, but we
sure.
used to have there used to be a big street art festival that they had in New York where they would just bring the artists down into, I think it was Borum Hill, and they would you can watch them paint the sides of the buildings
Ooh,
live. And that I thought was always crazy.
that's cool. What
Yeah.
was the name? You mentioned Miami. What is the name of that?
I think it's called Wyndham Hills.
Wyndham Hills.
Wyndham Hills. There used to be a place in New York called Five Points, but it's been a couple of years since they painted over it, and it was a place that you could just go, and if you were an artist, they would just draw on walls, and then they would reuse it, and then they would have new artists come. So every time you could go, you could see it
Mm.
differently. But
Wynwood Walls. Is that what this is? Is that did I
yes,
find?
yes, Wynwood Walls.
Mm.
Yeah,
Cool, cool. Yeah, this looks awesome.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and that's like a destination place, and then the one in Borum Hill that they have has walls that are about that size. They're like the size of the side of buildings.
oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff has always been really interesting to me. I only have a passing familiarity with. I've seen like Exit Through the Gift Shop.
Mhm.
I'm sure you've seen that, right?
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
and so like, it's always been fascinating to me, but never like followed it super closely. I think that's really interesting.
Cool.
You mentioned sci-fi films. What are some of your favorite sci-fi films? Do you have a favorite?
Okay, I don't know that I don't know how. Okay, so all right, I'm outing myself here. There are two
Okay.
types of sci-fi films that I like.
Mm,
Okay, one which is usually is something that is very good space art. I'm trying to think of like I loved Dune. Like that is a
mm,
beautiful example of that. Right now,
mm,
these are I say sci-fi, but it's also fantasy. I am
sure.
a huge fan of Wheel of Time that they just made a
Mm,
series of, and which I am
okay.
loving. I'm actually introducing Bill to it, and he gets very excited because usually I watch something with him and he geeks out and stops it and starts to tell me all about it. So I was like, all
Uh
right, this is
huh.
my turn.
Nice.
So yeah, so I stop everything and it's like they have the books were all like 400 or 500 plus pages. I
Mm,
worked in a library when I was in high school coming up, and I was an avid reader, so I used to grab things from there. So I read all the books before I had watched it. So I've been kind of waiting for this to come out. But
nice.
so those I consider good.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a my my drug of choice, if you will, is horrible sci-fi.
Okay.
So I will watch, like, it can be very bad. I will watch the CW versions of many, many things. I will,
Hell yeah.
if it's like there was, if it barely makes any sense, but they're trying to plug it together, I will watch it just to see, like, super campy, anything like that. I will definitely, like, that's sort of my de-stressor of things. I watch
What
very bad.
in that genre? I'm curious. What's like a show or a movie that's like, oh, this encapsulates everything that I love about shitty sci-fi.
Oh gosh. All right. So I will say, like, one of the things that I'm trying to think of the name of it, because literally I will we watched the one that was very what was it? There was a guy, there was a priest, there was a Tyrannosaurus Rex. That was crazy. I'm trying to think of what the name of it was. Oh man, I saw it.
Is it TV? Is it a show?
Yeah, this was a movie. That was a movie of films I've watched. There was, like, I'll watch it if it has magic and it has, like, vampires, something. I'll watch most of it. There was I even watched something that was like a warrior nun on TV that I thought was hilarious. Because that's the thing, is I will think it's hilarious after we watched Evil. I think is okay. Like, that's fine. It's absurd, so that kind of walks the line. But yeah, I also, once I watched, there was a show about mermaids that was on Netflix. That was the most absurd thing that I ever saw. It was like a dub of something. These mermaids were coming out, and I can't remember the title because it was horrible. I watched something about yeah, there was this, it wasn't even Teen Wolf grade. It was just like these werewolf people who had sort of come out. If I'm de-stressing or in the background, we'll watch that. I also, series, wow, I'm really giving you my what I consider bad sci-fi. What is also the, what is, Cowboy, Wyatt Earp. There's one that's supposed to be his great-granddaughter. I consider that not good, but and it's
Wyatt Earp's great-granddaughter?
Yes, there's a series on it. I know, I'm not surprised you've never heard of it. Why would you?
Winona Earp?
Yes,
Whoa.
I forced Bill to watch that with me. I'm like, it's hilarious. There's magic. She has a gun. She's a cowboy. He's like, we'll watch something. I'm like, I promise we'll watch something good after this. I'm like, just put it on in the background. I'm like, I didn't finish the series, to my credit, but I did. I thought it was hilarious. And I think at the beginning of the pandemic, we watched one of those that was like I forget the name of it, that was like a combination of, I think it was like they took every sci-fi trope in the world, shook it up in a paper bag, and then, made a show about it. So we would have fun kind of guessing what plot point and what series they would steal from next. So that's always fun.
So I just want to read for those who are not familiar with Winona Earp. The great-great-granddaughter of Wyatt Earp. In the series, Winona Earp returns to her hometown of Purgatory, where she battles revenants, the reincarnated outlaws that Wyatt killed.
Well, hello.
That's fucking sick. Oh my god. Now, I was trying to find this dinosaur priest movie you were talking about. And I don't know if this was it. But if you haven't seen this, it sounds right up your alley. The Velocipaster?
Yes, Velocipaster.
Oh, was that it?
That was it. Yes, that was.
Oh, shit.
They told us about that. They're like, this movie. I'm like, this is hilarious. This is the best. It's absurd and it's inane. And
it follows Pastor Doug Jones, who becomes infected by an artifact, resulting in him turning into a velociraptor when he becomes angry. Oh, I need to see this movie.
It's actually
was
very
it good?
Funny. It is very, very funny. Yeah, it was. It's definitely entertaining. I will say that. We all watched it. I think I watched it at Reverend Christina's house. We had a really good time. Yeah, stuff like that. I mean, I would say people are sometimes shocked by the level of like, I won't say bad, I will say interesting sci-fi that I will watch.
Sure.
Because I also like, I do read like regular literature and like, and other things, but this is sort of, like I read a lot of classic literature, and I was a big Dostoevsky fan, but for some reason, I'm like, Winona Earp gets me every time. Who knew?
The way the shows that you watch, it reminds me of the shows that my wife likes to watch.
Oh no,
because she loves good stuff too. Good's not the right word. Like mainstream. Like we're not gonna call this stuff bad. It's just it's fun, right? Because there's that stuff where she's gonna pay attention, but if she's like just wants to like chat with her friend and make fun of something while watching, just like you said, de-stressing.
Yeah.
She like you mentioned vampires. She loves like vampire stuff, stupid horror stuff, and and that's why people love. She also loves like the reality shows that everybody. It's very popular, like the Housewives of whatever, all that stuff. It's I get it. It's like sometimes you just kind of want to watch something that's goofy and you don't have to pay attention the entire time. I understand that.
Yeah. I don't watch as many reality TV shows for some reason, but
yeah, I never really got into it either, but
yeah.
I know a lot of people who are super into them, which I get because I used to like the competition driven ones like Amazing Race or like
I was a
Last Comic Standing, those were my jam.
Last Comic Standing. I was also was also a big fan of American Ninja Warrior and the original one.
yeah. That's the kind of stuff where I'm like, okay, I can get into this or like Chopped. I don't know if you've watched Chopped.
I have watched Chopped. Yeah.
I love Chopped. So I get it. So then going back to you mentioned vampires. It was a little side note, but I'm just curious. So is that like out of all that genre of stuff, do you like all vampire stuff like my wife does? Like she'll watch anything with a vampire even if it's terrible. She's like,
yes. I like some stuff more than others.
Sure.
But even if it's terrible, and I like, I've watched a whole bunch of stuff. I will admit I watched, I watched The Twilight, The Vampire Diaries, all of those. I've watched the classic. I've watched the classic stuff. I've watched the, like the old Nosferatu and all that. Yeah. And also all like the, interview stuff. Those are like more of the mainstream things, but there's a couple of there's a really amazing, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I feel like it was a Polish film that was about vampires. It was like an art film, and it was really, really well done. There's, if I can remember it.
Is it the one? I think I know the one. Let me just check the country.
I might be wrong with the country, but
no, I might be thinking of a different. Because it was that vampire guy. It's been a while. Because immediately I thought of Let the Right One In, which I'm sure you've seen,
yes, that's
right?
wonderful. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, but that's not the one you're talking about. That was Swedish, right?
Yeah, that might be. I might be getting my country wrong. This is because it's the only thing coming up for me is a Polish vampire in Burbank, which I have never seen, but now I am obsessed.
Now you might
with
have to see
wanting
it,
to know some 1983 film of a Polish vampire in Burbank with okay, and there's werewolves in it.
Health spa instructor. Ooh, okay.
All right, this is definitely like I will say I'm also not against if I get through something turning it off if there's a point, but sure. I'll check it out first. But I've always been a big sort of sci-fi. Some of the earliest books kind of the fantasy stuff that I, even as a child, like I read a lot of Ursula K. Le Guin and a lot of different things.
Sure. So for you, it's the nerdiness has never been you're no stranger to it.
No, we didn't. No, and we didn't know we were being nerdy. Like I grew up, watching all the Star Trek and the Star Wars with my parents, and they were. It was just like that's that was what was on in the house. But we didn't think of it as, I didn't even think of it like as a fandom or anything. We were just like, that's what you watch on TV.
Nice.
So yeah. But yeah.
Now, I like to give the guest an opportunity, if you'd like. Is there a question you would like to ask me, or a topic you would like to bring up? If not, don't worry about it. But if you have anything, feel free.
Well, I'm curious. I mean, like, we've had this conversation before. I feel like, we're getting a chance to talk. I don't know offhand. I would think of it. But what are your, like, do you have, like, I know you've probably talked about this before, but do you have, like, any like, little nerdy sci-fi or fantasy things? Is there a show that you love that that you might...
Specifically in that realm, the sci-fi fantasy?
I would say either it can be sci-fi, it can be sci-fi in any genre, because I do take, like the Blade Runner type of things, or like this space, that anything that's, mech or science oriented, or fantasy. It can be either one of those. I know that's huge genres. I've just basically given you everything.
Sure. So basically the question is there anything sci-fi or fantasy that I'm super into?
Yeah. Like a film or something that you might like.
Yeah, let me think. Because I'm not my sort of nerdy interests. It's like the biggest stuff I'm into are like the board games. Clearly, very much into anime. And so I mean, there's definitely ones in there I could pick out. I do watch a lot of movies. So I know a lot of people will specify like, oh, I'm big into horror. I'm big into this. I'm big into that. But for me, I love all types of films. So it's not like I'm seeking out only, my wife is more like, oh, horror movies. Yeah, she wants to watch the horror movies.
Yeah,
I will watch any type of movie. But I'm thinking of ones that go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say I'm not a horror movie person. Strangely, I'm with everything that I've just said. We watched. I consider it psychological thriller, like the Breathe movies. Also, I can't take anything. I think if it goes into like sort of like if it becomes too jumpy, I don't like it.
Breathe. You mean like don't breathe?
Don't breathe.
Those
yeah,
ones?
Like that. I couldn't watch the movie. Bill had to watch it on his own. We got halfway through, and I was like, "We're done." I'm done with this movie. I'm like, it's causing me too much anxiety.
I see. So thrillers and horror, not necessarily your thing.
No,
okay.
Yeah.
Let me look up because to give you a sense of the type of person I am, I for the past, I want to say 7-8 years, I keep a list of every new movie I've watched,
Cool.
shows I watched. It's just sort of something that came in handy, because sometimes people will be like, hey, you seen anything good lately? And I'm like, I can literally tell you the date when you pull it up. Like, so looking back on stuff, let's see, sci-fi, fantasy, one that like, I guess this is kind of a sci-fi, but like I loved the movie Shin Godzilla.
Oh yes, I did actually. I saw the premiere of that out in New York. Very cool.
I loved it. I mean,
that was
it's Hideaki Anno directing, who Evangelion, and just seeing the sort of the comedy of like the failure of bureaucracy mixed with the legit cool stuff that Godzilla gets to do. Right? It was. I thought that was fantastic.
It was very cool.
It's funny, like fantasy. I keep bringing up everything my wife likes. She's super into the fantasy now. She loves like D&D and is really getting into all that stuff. I never really got into high fantasy. Like I like Lord of the Rings.
Right.
I think it's a pretty normie sort of. But I like. I read the books. I like the movies a lot. Did not care for the Hobbit movies, but I did like the Hobbit, the book. And yet sci-fi is also like, I don't know, for some reason, like I wouldn't say I'm a sci-fi or fantasy like obsessed. Just like if it happens to be sci-fi or fantasy and it's good,
good,
and
then
resonates with me,
you'll watch it. Did you ever?
then I'm into it. Yeah.
I'm wondering if there was. I used to like I watch a whole bunch of other things. I also love historical dramas and
Mm.
a lot of different things. There was a period of time though that I really loved uh like scientifically like time travel type things, like just the concept of
Mm.
that. So
Yeah.
there was what is it called? The hybrid off the Yeah, I think your system of writing things down so that you can refer to them is so much better than mine. I like there was
You
a
know,
thing and
you can start like now,
Mhm.
and it's a thing that I had. It's just you can even do it on your phone. Some people. A friend of mine does it on his phone, and it's really handy because then it's like anytime someone asks you, you're like, "Whoa, what was it?" Boop, boop, boop. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
it was this. It is handy. But what would is your turn? Think of a movie?
Yeah, I'll think of it. It'll come to me. Maybe I'll just tell you afterward. There was one there's yeah, I'll think of it. It was this one was a sci-fi. But like I said, I also was a big fan growing up of historical movies and war
Sure.
movies. I was a big when I was younger, I was a
Mm.
Civil War buff. I really liked which is funny because I have no family that would have been involved in it since we were in Puerto Rico is, not it's
Hmm.
totally different, but I enjoyed reading things. So I do like history and various different things. I'll think of it.
Nice.
There was there's like it's like a time travel something that you said reminded me of it. I'll think of it and I'll tell you or I'll bring it back.
Well, but thinking on time travel
Mhm.
or time, let's see, what are some like good? I feel like I saw something recently that was like a pretty good timey
Yeah.
thing. Now I'm just like, I'll think of it. I'll think of it. I'm not sure.
Sorry, I'm
Um,
polluting you. I'm polluting you with my random
um,
references. Um,
I guess I'm curious. So for me, who's someone who's really into anime,
mhm.
like what is your sort of experience with anime? Are you into it? Are you not? Or you're like I've seen some stuff, or what is your sort of exposure?
I love anime. I haven't
Mm.
watched as much as some other people have. Like there's series that I've watched and I will get
Mm.
into, but I know there's a lot of smaller projects. It's harder for me to keep up with everything. So
Very
there's a
fair.
lot of stuff that I watched classic, but I I was sort of reared the stuff that I watched were all the beginning that is there's a lot of older stuff and now I've been getting into things like I loved was I Promised Neverland when I had seen that. I did
Oh
not
yeah,
see it when it
nice.
came out, so I've been watching those and I've been
Oh,
no,
what's up?
I'm just laughing. I came to JoJo's late, so I was watching that, and that's one of those shows that I was laughing hysterically at. But there's I as much as I'll geek out about various different things, I am kind of like you in the sense that I'll watch broad drama, like a
Mm.
broad spectrum of different types of drama. I may geek out about one thing, but then I will watch slice of life things and so
Mm.
it depends. What are your favorites? Like is there a type of anime or are you sort of everything?
Again, for me, like anytime I dive into a hobby, for
Mhm.
me, it's always like I just want to experience as much of it, like all different types as possible, and like get super like. I always I say this not as like, oh, I'm so smart, but like knowledgeable. I
Mhm.
like being like, I love being like, oh, I've seen that, yeah, and I can recommend you this and recommend you this. Like when you mentioned time travel, for example, I'm like, have you seen Steins Gate?
I have
Or
not
know what
seen
that is?
Steins Gate. I have heard of Steins Gate, but I have not seen Steins Gate.
I think if Bill hasn't seen it,
Mhm.
you should check it out. It's really really good. Don't look up anything about it,
I won't.
but it's a really good, like, very weird sci-fi anime, and I think you would like it a lot.
Ooh,
For me, like people on the pod listening to the podcast, like here he goes again. My favorite anime of all time is called Chihaya Furu.
okay.
And the TLDR is it is about a poetry card game called Karuta, where you people like a reader reads a verse, and then the two players have to race to hit the card. There's like several cards in front of them. If they hit the card with the right verse, which sounds extremely boring. It
Mhm.
is not. It is heartwarming and exhilarating and has wonderful characters. One of those things where I was like, what? Why do am I going to understand this show?
Mm-hmm.
The show understands that, it's an obscure sport in Japan.
Of guessing
so the show
poetry?
presents it in a way. Yeah, it's like it's more like, it's like almost like a sport. Essentially, they have these very famous poems.
Mm-hmm.
The Haku Ish. Let me just get the exact name up. The Ogura Hyakunin Ishu,
Mm-hmm.
and it's essentially a collection of 100 poems by different poets in Japan, and like they set out these cards
Mm-hmm.
like in front of each player, and a reader reads a verse, and then whatever verse matches like the next verse of that,
Mm-hmm.
you have to hit that card with your hand and knock it out of the field. And you're just trying to do it before the opponent does, which again sounds maybe boring or not interesting, but it's great. I love that show, and I knew nothing about what Karuto was,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm obsessed with it. Now I rewatched some of it recently again and again. Everyone I've introduced it to has loved it.
It actually doesn't like it's. I'm fascinated with anime, with that they get into these genres of stuff where people are so passionate about things. But to be honest, I am a poetry fan and classic at that too, and modern stuff as well. So that like the concept of that sounds interesting to me, even as like I would watch it, but I'm picturing other sort of verses that I can understand that, like the continuation of that.
Yeah,
if
no,
that makes sense.
especially since you're a poet, you love poetry. You should check it out. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah,
I'll write out the name.
I was going to say, because I don't think I'll be able to spell that offhand.
Yeah, it's a tough title, but I think like watch a couple episodes and most people get hooked right away.
Cool.
And kind of like how you just were talking about, what's great about the show is that some players are like, I just go by sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just hear the syllable, bam. But some players are like, I need to think about, the imagery that the poem conveys to me through
Mm-hmm.
its meaning. I almost visualize it, and that's a way that I can, see the card and which card to go for, or like, especially if you love poetry, I think
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be interesting to you. But going back to just sort of I was gonna say, I had some sci-fi films. Like, have you seen Ex Machina?
Oh my gosh, I feel like which one is that? I think I believe
Ex
I have.
Machina is the one with Oscar Isaac, and Donald Gleason. It's like basically, hey, we're gonna do the Turing test with this very realistic looking human robot. With AI,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of what you should look up. It's Alex Garland, if you're
Mm-hmm.
familiar with. If you saw like what did he do, like Annihilation? He wrote like 28 Days Later and Dread, and
Yeah, I see. And Chappie. Here we go.
did he write?
It says it's coming up. Maybe people also search for Chappie.
No, he
'cause it
did
says,
not write.
Okay,
He did not write Chappie.
I was like, it seems out of character.
Chappie was the District 9 guy, right?
Yes, yeah.
Neil Blomkamp.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, I did not watch
Mhm.
Chappie,
Yeah.
but I did like District 9 a lot.
Yeah. It's funny.
But yeah, so that's a sci-fi one. The fantasy, it's such a broad.
Yeah, well, that's why I said it. It's a big ask. I mean, I think that makes sense, and but if you have something that you think of at some point,
let me think. A fantasy. I again, like I mentioned, high fantasy just
Mhm.
it's kind of something I don't really.
It's not
get
your thing, yeah.
into, but what would be one that would kind of fit? One that I mean, okay. Now you're just gonna hear me ramble on and on about anime.
I'm fine with it.
I hope you understand the gates you've opened. But for me, quintessential sci-fi anime is Legend of the Galactic Heroes, if you're familiar with that.
No, why did it sound familiar?
It's a classic anime. It was a series of novels. And then they adapted it into an anime in the I believe it was started in the 80s. 80s. It was like 10 years. It's a very long show. I describe it as like, political space, maneuvering. It's like it's between these two galactic regions, and they're embroiled in this war, and it's amazing. They did a reboot of it, not a reboot, but like I guess a new version of it. That was a couple years ago, and I haven't seen that one.
You saw the earlier ones.
Yeah, I saw the original show.
Okay.
I did a voice for the new one, but I still haven't seen it. I hear it's good, but the classic one is I'm a big fan of that. And then going to, I think the closest thing I can think of that's like fantasy. This one's kind of cheating because I love slice of life stuff. Is you ever heard of Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid?
Wait, when is this from, Miss Kobayashi?
It's pretty new. It's like maybe a couple years ago. The second season just came out like very recently. It's a very sweet show. It's like
I have heard of it, but I do not know much about it. Yes, because I've seen the images. I'm looking at it, and I remember seeing pictures of it, but I haven't heard about it. I haven't watched it.
It's a show I did not think I was going to like, because I normally am not into like fan service, like you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
But
it's actually a very sweet show where it's just this woman encounters a maid who can turn to a giant dragon, and it's
that
just
sounds
like and essentially she just is like, hey, we like you did something for me, I'm gonna repay the favor, I'm gonna be your dragon maid, which sounds like utter trash, but it's but I'm a big snob, and I'll say it's actually extremely heartwarming. Also, like because it's like it's a very funny, like, oh, she's from a different dimension, this fantasy realm, and she's trying to get used to like our realm, our world, and then it becomes this almost very like sweet domestic slice of life sort of like light comedy between like this woman and her dragon man, who's in love with her, of course. And then they have almost like this dragon daughter, not between them, like an adopted dragon, like she comes to live with them too. So it's like two moms and their dragon daughter just hanging out. It's really sweet, and I guess that's like the closest thing I can think of offhand. I guess I tend to but I like sci-fi maybe more than fantasy.
Okay.
Oh, another good fantasy one is like Little Witch Academia, if you're familiar with that.
That one I am familiar with, so that one I do know.
Yeah, that one's very fun.
Yeah.
Like very, very, very silly, sweet, that sort of thing. I think if you had to pin my taste down in anime, like the best stuff for me is like that slice of life, like, where it can be like Chihaya-Fu, like it's a little more down to earth. It can be about like a topic that is real. I tend to maybe unfairly, like, my eyes glaze over where if it's just like, there are some anime that are like anti-Sungwon where it's like, oh, it's just like, oh, they're called isekai. I don't know if you're familiar with what
Alejandro,
isekai is.
we were just yes. Alejandro taught me that word because we were at a show together, and he was like, as long as it's not isekai.
Isekai is just like, oh, I got transported to another realm, and I'm usually an annoying high school pervert, and I'm so smart, and I'm gonna be good at everything, and I'm like, give me like a nice, domestic, light comedy or drama or something else. That's I've never got, like, if the more outlandish and like, and I don't, because I do enjoy like a good classic like shonen, like My Hero Academia is a lot of fun.
Yes.
One Piece, I love One Piece. Just because it's like boisterous and full of action and full of funny, goofy characters. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm maybe talking about the ones that are like too self-serious and they're not worth the self-seriousness. That's something where I'm like, okay, I don't care. But that's just my personal taste, of course. Now, I guess going back to so to kind of turn around to you, what are, let's say for you, it could be like tropes or stuff that you're like, this isn't my style. Like, I'm not as into blank. Like, I know you mentioned you don't like horror movies. Is there anything like that where you're like...
I don't like horror movies. I don't like, I don't like things where I'm horrified, or I have to get on a very negative moral plane. Like, I have to put myself in something that causes me issue, and I'm supposed to. It's a different thing when you have a character that you're trying to, that you see good sides in. But I don't. I have issue of that, and I don't like the torture porny kind of things. I don't like. I have a very logical side of me, and I do not like when people, I will make fun of irrational things in other shows, like a Winona Earp or things like that. But I don't like that stuff that is dangerous, or that I feel like is that I'm having to go aboard with somebody who I don't think that they're morally reprehensible to me. I don't want to watch that. Okay. Tropes. I mean, I do like to be challenged, but I don't like that. Tropes of things. I get bored if someone has all the powers, Sure. There's nothing, it's the same kind of thing. If you know exactly who the villain is going to be, I'm not about that. I'm trying to think of tropes that, like in the, why this question is hard for me is because there are things that I dislike and that I hate, and I'll tell you when I see them. It's easier for me to talk about the things that I like, but sure. What was I just gonna say?
Well, I guess you mentioned like you don't like when like you have to follow, like, let's say a protagonist who's morally. Is there an example of like a show or a movie like that you're like, this wasn't really for me because of that?
I mean, this was I'm trying to think of an example that is. I also, like, for me also, like, sometimes I get tired of too much extra fan service. Like, that gets to me sometimes too. Like, if I have to, and I'm like, oh, you just did that and we love you, and I'm like, you know what, I don't enjoy that. That would be very bad for me. But like the don't breathe thing. One of the, some of the issues of following them, I had a hard time. The setup, I didn't want them to be there. Like, there was a whole bunch of things, but I was also like, I didn't enjoy it. This is kind of like a simple version, but I didn't enjoy that. I was like, there is no one here. And that, like, in the beginning, before you find out, I don't want to spoiler for anybody, anything that the other guy might have done. It was very, I was very much like, it is difficult for me to watch people continuously making choices that are not good. And I know that there's a lot of stories that have you that, but don't worry, because they get their revenge in the end. I'm like, that's not, I don't know if I'm explaining it properly, but there's something about that. Like, I do enjoy, I don't mind conflicted people, and I don't mind that you have to sort of, and I think that's, like, I don't know why I'm saying Castlevania in this case. Like, Castlevania is a place where you have people who have moral issues. They're going back and forth, and it's more philosophical, and you're figuring things out. These aren't, they're not related. Like, that is something that I love. Like, that's a show that I absolutely love. Sure. I like things that have, psychological explanations of things in that way. But I don't like, I don't like when I have to, when it's like, and I don't like, I think I don't enjoy being scared in some ways. And I also don't like just, aberrant, awful people. I don't want to celebrate them. I don't know if that sounds...
I can see where you're coming from. Like how you're asking me to follow this narrative, but already you're either like, why are these people doing this thing? Or like, you're just not enjoying, you're getting nothing out of it.
Yeah.
Right?
And if I'm like,
yeah, I can understand.
Yeah.
That.
And if everybody's just a crazy psychotic person, I don't have anything, I don't.
There's nothing empathetic to latch on to for you to keep you like, interested.
Yeah. And I think I need to like, I'll follow someone who's struggling, but I won't,
Sure.
I don't know that I just got deep into that, but it's something. But
yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I'm interested in sort of bringing up. Now, this is not even related to what we've been talking about.
Oh, it's totally fine.
But is that so you're kind of like going back. I'm always interested in like when I'm talking to other actors, like what do you find the most fulfilling about the craft? Like, this is something that I've asked other people, and I'm always interested in hearing what people like when you are, in it and doing the job. Like, what is to you the most satisfying aspect about it?
It's interesting because I know I work on a lot of voiceover. I started in stage, and I'll do. I've done cabaret. I've done various different things, but the thing that I find most fulfilling is I think the way that I came to this. And I actually remember I talked a little bit with, I did an interview with Crispin Freeman about this, but the way that I came to this was also about me trying to, I even approached the show this way is that it's about people trying to understand their emotions. So trying to bring this, it sounds crazy, but like trying to bring like layers or trying to bring things to that when it's appropriate, trying to, figure out like, why are they saying these things? What is going on? And like, how are they reacting to each other and why are they doing it? I do the same thing when I'm directing, is like, what's bringing these people together? I mean, but that's for that type of work. I love watching something or doing something and you're like, oh, okay, this is why, figuring out there's like a puzzle, like why are they doing it? What is happening? That for me, getting into a realism in that kind of way is fun. But I also, this actually goes back to the poetry game that you were talking about, how people see the poetry. Sometimes they hear it and sometimes they feel it. Sure. That's one side. The other side is I am a huge vaudeville fan. And there is, there's either like this internal thing or there's like, when you say musicality, people take it the wrong way, but there's like a rhythm. There's like almost like a life of things coming together. And I enjoy that as well. Sort of like a little of a slapstick comic timing. I don't know if that makes sense. A lot of the stuff is I enjoy the work. I do love that a lot of the stuff touches people and that it has meaning in other people's life, because I know that for me, there's shows that have gotten me through things that I wouldn't otherwise. But but a lot of the times that's it's fun for me to get into like the nooks and crannies of somebody. What are you? I mean, I'm curious as to, like, it's such a weird thing to answer because it's like, what do you enjoy about doing something that I like that I like making that, like, that little world for them.
Yeah. For me, I've said this before, and I always kind of preface it with, it's a little cheesy, but I don't fucking care. Who cares? Like, for me, it's like I really like getting lost in it, that to me is getting we had a little drop of getting what?
Oh,
getting lost in it.
Yes,
getting so into it that you've sort of it's not, you're no longer thinking of yourself like I'm in a booth, doing this or whatever. It's like you are in it. It's happening, whatever it is. It's really happening. Like, I won't say that I get to have that every single time I work. But, if you're lucky, there'll be, and, I think also the more time you spend with the character and, you really start to.
Yeah, and it kind of takes over.
It takes over. You just get so engrossed and so to the point where, you don't have, not stressing out about like this and that and just trying to be as true to it and as possible. That was what got me interested in the first place. Like I've told this story many times on the podcast, but what got me interested in voiceover was my friend wrote radio plays and we would all do the voice, the characters. And before that, I had I thought voice acting was cool, but I didn't know the thing necessarily that I was. But when I found myself, doing, there was one particular like one we did, and I was so into it, and I wasn't even thinking about where I was, and then I was like, oh, like this is it. This is what I want to do. I get it. It's not about like, I don't know, because I do kind of like how you were saying, I do appreciate like the technical aspects of stuff too, and like nailing certain things. And I think you brought up an interesting point about sort of like musicality, and there's definitely like there's rhythm and there's musicality and like timing, which getting like just knowing like, oh no, this is how it's got to be like this, and landing that, there's a lot of satisfaction in that as well, especially go ahead.
No, I'm saying I agree, but I think what's interesting is I think the thing that that you're talking about, which is the flow, is like that flow of being just like sucked into it, that is similar to what I'm saying, even though I'm talking about the little, I will talk about those little like nooks and crannies of things, but that's like me understanding something is then, you can kind of go and you get it. To me, the musicality stuff is like, I can hear, I'm like, I get this. This is like, I hear a music for something, or I hear like the arc of the way that the scene goes, and that is but I disappear into those things too. So I do understand. It's hard to like explain that sometimes.
Almost like instinctual.
Yeah.
They just sort of it goes beyond like, oh, how do I do it? And you just do it.
Yeah.
Like, you just do it, and and obviously with the guidance of a great director, you'll that always will accentuate and help a performance. But I don't know. Some people, you always get asked the question like, how do you get into voice acting? How do you get good at voice acting? And it's always for me just I don't know, get to a point where you are comfortable enough and like able to just go for it.
Yeah, and you're not thinking of it. You're not self-conscious, and it kind of you're just doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I think what will bring out, the best performances out of an actor is that. But yeah, anyway, that was something I'm always very interested in, hearing how people respond to that question and what resonates with people. I always find that very interesting. Now we're actually right at the end point here.
Oh wow.
So thank you again for taking the time. This was great.
Thank you. Yeah, totally fun. Anytime. That was awesome. And I have new things to watch.
Yes. If you do watch any of them, let me know. Like no joke. Like just I've had whenever I recommend it to people, sometimes they'll message me like, I watched it. It's great. I'm like, yes, I love and I'm always down to recommend. That's my jam. I love recommending new stuff for people, like whether it's board games or anime or movies or whatever. I restaurants. I anything that I dive into, I'm always eager to get more people like, yeah, you should try this. You should try this. So, let me know if you watch any of them. Now, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter, where I'm on oftentimes more, which is my handle there is Lisa Lise Jam. So it's LISALISE Jam. All my names are variations of the Lisa Lisa and the Cult Jam. So you can find me on Instagram at Lisa Cult Jelly, and the same thing with Facebook. So you'll see me. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great fun. Thank you.